Hi everyone, it's Alex York. I'm an editor at Forbes and I'm here with Janet Ho, the COO of Hume AI. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you give me a 30-second rundown of who you are and what Hume is?
Yeah, I'm Janet. I'm the COO of Hume. We are a New York-based AI company, and we train foundation models that generate voice and language together, also known as speech language models. Our ultimate goal is to optimize AI for well-being. We are building what we like to call empathic AI. And this model can be used and deployed in any application for a voice interface and generates the right tone, rhythm, and timbre appropriate to the language and the context and expressions of the user it's speaking with.
Very cool. When you were growing up, what were you into? Was it things like tech and, AI wasn't really so much talked about then, but what were your interests then?
I get this question a lot. People ask me like, oh, do you study computer science? Were you into tech all this time? The answer is resoundingly no. Growing up, I was really creative. I loved sewing things, making things with my hands. I still do. My sister's very artistic. My parents are both very creative, even though they don't work in creative industries. And yeah, I honestly kind of fell into tech, and I kind of see tech as a big horizontal layer across a lot of jobs and a lot of industries nowadays, and certainly becoming so, especially with AI, and we can talk more about that. But yeah, so growing up, definitely not. Really loved making things with my hands. And when I went to college, actually, I studied political science. I got a minor in computer science, but I also did not focus on tech immediately. So yeah.
Why the political science route? What made you decide to study that?
Yeah. I'm very interested in public policy, and I do think that it's the primary way we can affect change, especially with more recent things happening and seeing, people might disagree with more recent things happening and how much influence a lot of tech leaders are having on Capitol Hill, and whether or not that's good or bad for the world to be seen, I guess. But I think public policy has always meant a lot to me, and politics has always been a big interest of mine. So I think that's why I focused on it.
Did you see yourself becoming a founder? Like when you were growing up, you're interested in creative things. There are so many, I feel like a lot of founders are so creative in nature. Did you want to go down the entrepreneurship route?
Honestly, no. I also think that maybe that's probably a good thing. I think that, and obviously founders come in all different shapes and sizes, but, and I might get some hate for this, but I actually don't know if it's a really great idea to have somebody like found a company simply because they like want to start something. The best founders I've met have always been people who, see a problem they really want to solve, feel really strongly about that, and are like, I wouldn't really run a company besides doing something like this. Obviously, there have been a lot of success stories that suggest otherwise, but that's kind of my personal philosophy. That being said, not to say that, one way is better than another, but I did not see myself as an entrepreneur. I guess I never was afraid to do things a little bit differently from others, not to sound super cliche, but definitely have always marched to the beat of my own drum. And I have a lot of ideas, but I don't know if I'd say that I envision myself as like a tech founder or leading a tech company or anything like that. Yes.
How would you say, because I know you came from a PM background and then you were at a VC fund for a bit. Can you walk me through that career journey? How have those different roles led one to the other?
Totally. The biggest thing that kind of shook a lot of that up was COVID. Right at the offset of COVID, I was working as a product manager. And then because COVID happened, I ended up working remotely. Everyone started working remotely. I ended up living in Hawaii for a little over a year.
Oh, wow.
My friend was starting a VC firm there, and he asked if I wanted to join. It just so happened that some of the people involved were actually in Hawaii at that time. And we went, and we had no idea. Like nobody had any idea like how long COVID is going to go for. So we ended up just staying an entire year. And I think that actually was very foundational in kind of a lot of the working relationships I ended up having, Hume and how Hume started. And so it did kind of happen, or it will definitely happen organically. And I think at every point of that journey, I was just like pretty open-minded and said yes.
What gave you the confidence to make that jump? Like, for instance, from working with an investment firm to then jumping into a startup.
Totally. So I was actually helping with a startup quite a bit. And then it just happened to be that the startup needed more and more help, more and more work. And I just really enjoyed doing the work. I was like, oh my gosh, like I really love these people. I really enjoy working deeply. Not that I didn't enjoy my investing job. It was really interesting, really fun. But I was like, this is something I really like doing and I'm quite good at it. And so I think there was obviously a formal conversation where I was like, well, it looks like I'm working like 80% full time on this thing. It was time to make that formal transition. And so I think like the time I had to gradually transition gave me the confidence to fully transition. Yeah, the best advice I have for people is to, if you see an opportunity where a lot of smart people are working and they need a hand, just jump in and do whatever it takes. I think, I'm not an AI researcher. I'm definitely not an engineer as well. But I think when, Hume first started and there was a lot of exciting work on the research side, on the technical side within the company, what they really needed was somebody who would kind of figure everything else out and keep things together. And while that wasn't something that I had certainly trained for or, I enjoy doing it. It's about attitude and it's about jumping in and saying yes to things like that, right? Like if you really want to be a part of an exciting opportunity, whatever it is, maybe it's a company you want to work for, maybe it's a group of people you want to work with. I think figuring out the details ahead of time can often make you feel pretty stuck and may actually let the opportunity pass by. I think the most successful people I've met in life are also the ones who ironically kind of create those opportunities for themselves, right? Because typically it may be a job that people might pass over. People might think like, oh, I don't want to do that. But I think being like, yes, like I'm going to do that. And I am not going to complain. I'm going to really work hard is really important. And I think it's something that people should keep in mind. I think that's like the best advice I have to give is just to work hard and like take things as they come. And I think that ultimately, if you have different goals and different ambitions, those opportunities will again present themselves. And you need to be able to like kind of prove yourself at every step of the way that you're willing to kind of take on an existing group of work to kind of get more. Yeah. And so I guess it's important to not let yourself be the blocker to those.
There's so much changing in AI right now. Yeah. What, for people who don't know what Hume is or have not used it before, can you give us a rundown of like exactly who the user is and what they're coming to the platform to do?
Sure. So we train speech language models. It's a model that can generate AI voice and generate the right tone, rhythm, and timbre depending on the context of the conversation, so the language, because it's a model that understands speech and language, which is, we're the only startup with a speech language model in production, actually. And it can also take into account the user's expressions because we actually have this way to measure expressions in the user's voice and their language that they're talking. And so what you get is basically a conversational AI. It's a model that people can access via API and deploy into any kind of product application. So our group of users are developers who work in healthcare, ed tech, customer service, et cetera. And we're actually releasing more tools soon. But the vision for the company has always been to be the AI voice that people can trust and trust not only for themselves because we have a consumer app, but also that developers can trust to use in their applications. And our model can actually call other models as well to do specific tasks. So let's just say that maybe you want someone to, you're building an ed tech app and you want the model to be able to answer this user's inquiry and their inquiry is very technically sophisticated. It's like a very complicated math problem. Our model can actually orchestrate another model. Maybe it's the best model for solving math problems to actually like generate that response and pass it through to the user. But our model kind of plays that that high EQ orchestrator. And you obviously want this answer delivered in a, approachable and understandable way. It should be delivered in the right tone of voice.
Yeah.
It should, be delivered in a way that humans have conversations.
Mm-hmm. So are your users, you mentioned they have like a consumer, platform.
Yeah, so they're developers.
Okay. And then, so is that who is paying you for the service, or who else are you kind of working with to
Exactly.
share this?
So our primary customers are developers.
Okay.
They're independent developers, developers at startups, developers at mid-sized companies, developers at enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of users on our platform, and they represent folks who are building and are technical, and they use our model, and they can basically add a few lines of code to their application and be able to call our model.
Okay, gotcha. So it's in a sense like integrated in the things that they are
Exactly,
building as well? Okay.
exactly.
Why did you guys want to go the route of the speech as opposed to just, a text coming back or something like that? I feel like there's been a lot of conversations about like how much should an AI model replicate a human, and a lot of like controversy there. Why did you guys go that direction?
Yeah, speech is just a lot more natural of a way to communicate and ingest information for humans. We can listen a lot faster than we read, and obviously having visual cues such as text and or images can be helpful as well. But at the end of the day, like, we communicate with each other through voice for a reason. A lot of context is also missing without voice, and accessibility wise, it's also pretty important. I think like that's a big reason as to why, voice is a really important part of communication and is an expectation for just how, AI of the future will become more helpful to us. There is like a limit to how helpful AI can be if it really is text-based only.
Yeah.
Like, you can imagine in the future, we were talking to a company who's working on a companion robot and looking for a voice. You might have robotic assistants all around your house helping you with things, right? You don't actually want to go over and like read the screen that kind of tells you what maybe the eggs are ready or something's happening. You want it to be able to talk to you. And with that, there's a lot of nuance to model out. We have the concept of back channeling. Like, you don't want it to interrupt you when you stop speaking. Maybe you're thinking. You don't want it to interrupt you too soon or too late. Humans, the more that we work on this, the more it's interesting to just begin to realize how smart humans are and how capable we are of like reading social cues and body gestures and each other's tone of voice. So delivering that experience is really important. I think whether or not, we build AI in a way that adapts and conforms to human communication is separate from whether or not AI is AGI, whether it's conscious or has a conscience. There we go. It's really separate from that. I think at Hume we really believe in a few things. First, that AI should understand human expressions to serve human well-being and be able to deliver the right kinds of information to people and ultimately make them happy. And the only way to do that is really to understand really intent and the tone of voice of people and deliver that in the right way. You kind of need that information. And I think the second piece is that, that it's very different to kind of have that inevitable future and also say that AI needs to be treated like a human or needs to sound exactly like a human or needs to have like a human body and needs to have a human face.
Right.
I kind of take a lot of inspiration from the Japanese, concept of yokai, which are like these spirits that reside in everyday objects, and they're kind of like little demons that reside in like vegetables and nature and water. I think like AI can totally be thought of as such. Like, they are just different things that exist. They can be as intelligent, and they are more intelligent than humans in many ways already, but they can be just these super intelligent pets that we have that should communicate in ways we wish our pets could communicate with us, or maybe not. Maybe you don't want to actually understand what your dog is saying because he or she may not be that smart. But it's so I think like there's definitely two separate bodies of thought there, and they can definitely be teased apart, if that makes sense.
In terms of the future that you were just talking about, having something notify you that the eggs are done cooking or that something is, happening in this side of the house. I mean, in many ways, it would be so convenient. Is that something that you guys are working toward?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we're building basically the voice and the EQ component and IQ component of that.
Okay.
So, while we're not working on robotics specifically, we do have customers in those spaces. And the model that we provide is going to be, the intelligence layer behind that. And you want it to have the right way of communicating with you, but also be able to say the right things, and just generally be something you enjoy speaking with, and also can personalize.
Definitely. What have been some of the biggest challenges in approaching this very like new wave of technology? So many people are after things like this, right? Like making AI more and more intelligent and more accessible in your daily life. What are some of the challenges though? Because I'm sure many come with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest challenge is how fast the space moves.
Yeah.
It's a challenge and a blessing because I actually feel like this race in AI that we see is really what's moving all of these companies at a breakneck pace to deliver cutting edge models week by week, honestly, and even day by day. If you're on AI Twitter, you'll just see new announcements every single day by different companies. So I think that would be like the biggest challenge, but also probably the biggest boon for the space in general. We can look forward to a lot of these applications in production sooner than people expect. And I actually think that we'll be able to pass like the AI speech Turing test soon. Like you won't be able to, identify whether or not an AI is actually sounds like a human or is actually AI. And
do you think that's a good thing?
That's a great question. So at Hume, we actually are pretty ahead of the curve on this. When we started the company, we started a sister nonprofit called the Hume Initiative, and it sets forth the only concrete guidelines for uses around empathic AI, so AI that understands human expressions. And the two things that we don't allow with our technology are manipulation and deception. And I think they're actually really great rules of thumb because almost every single bad use case with AI can fall into those two categories, right? Like we talk a lot about the future where people will inevitably have AI girlfriends and AI boyfriends. And, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Let's look at this, framework. If people have an AI girlfriend or boyfriend, are they being manipulated? Are they being deceived? How do we kind of define those things? Or are they entering into these relationships very willingly from a moral philosophical perspective? Like where does the onus of the company come in to say that like, no, like you shouldn't have these, we think, unhealthy habits versus you are a consenting adult, you know exactly what you're doing, and you're not being manipulated or deceived. And so I actually think that while there's a fine line, there is a clear line between applications who have good intent, want to better the lives of users and improve their well-being. And that can look like many forms. And then there are also use cases where the intent is to manipulate or deceive the end user with AI. And those are the ones that are actually very, very problematic, and that, all AI companies should be working towards ensuring don't happen with their technology.
And I feel like a lot of that has come up, especially like with the past election cycle. There have been a lot of cases of manipulation, like you said, of either data or putting it out in a way that maybe someone didn't consent to or whatnot. How can users, like you mentioned, like identify if a company, if a platform is doing it for the right reasons, or if they are being manipulated and deceived? Do you have a set of like tips for users out there today that are just, kind of coming to terms with
That's a great question. We talk about this a lot at Hume, and I think the best way to think about it is what I'm using improving my well-being in the long term, right? Like if you're being deceived, if you're being manipulated by AI, or maybe you don't know it's AI, how is it affecting your day-to-day life, right? Maybe you're being scammed and you're losing a lot of money. That doesn't sound like it's making you happy in the long term. Or maybe you're having this relationship with an AI persona whereby in the short term you feel happiness, but in the long term you feel like it takes a toll on your mental health. Like that by definition is also not, aligned with your well-being, is not serving your well-being. And so I think like understanding well-being as like a holistic way of looking at your life and seeing whether or not the tool you're using is helping that as opposed to harming is probably the best way we can do this. And I think for AI companies as well, they should also be using this metric, well-being metric, not even immediate happiness. Because a lot of things give us immediate happiness, right? But it's like, especially with TikTok, which I'm an avid TikTok user, it makes you immediately happy to be on it. But like,
and then like
stay
3
on it for a
hours
long
later,
time.
I'm like, okay, I gotta put this away.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's very important. And I think especially for adults and, just older users, that's something that they're able to really reflect on and decide on for themselves. And, they have like their free will to do that. But I think especially for younger users, that's where it gets really murky, where their brains aren't fully formed. They probably don't even understand or have the ability to reflect on internally, like, is this making me happy in the long term? And I think that's where AI companies actually have a lot more onus, and parents do as well, but also it's definitely a very new and prickly situation.
And what about like government or policy in general, coming from a background of, being interested in these sorts of things? What are your thoughts on regulation from the top down in that way?
It's a great question, because at the end of the day, I do believe in, I think like policymakers have a lot to consider. I think regulation has, a lot of waterfall effects, a lot of rippling effects. I don't think it would make sense to put onerous policies on AI companies for national security reasons as well. Like, as you can see, like, even though the US is at the forefront of the AI race, that may not be the case very much soon. And I think it's very, very important from like a national security perspective that we maintain our edge, and the free market economy and everything that the US offers for the brightest minds around the world is the reason why we are even in the position that we're in. And so I think like regulations need to be very, very careful. We don't want what's happening. Yeah, we don't want what's happening in other countries or in other continents to happen in the US. So, and I also don't believe that our policymakers, unfortunately, have the right context or knowledge about these nuances. I think that our government has historically been pretty tech illiterate. And I'm sure that, as consumers, we've kind of seen that play out in a lot of Senate hearings and just generally how our policymakers are not very much, they don't really know what's happening, in tech. And so I think it's doubly dangerous that those people would even think about making policies that maybe restrict, companies to operate in certain ways. That being said, I do think that it's important that, the government gains that technical literacy, especially with the pace in which AI is developing. And I think that there is no other way but to work with the leading minds in this space and business leaders in this space to do that. Obviously, everyone has their own interests, so I can't really, help with that. But I do think it's really important that the government gains that technical literacy first, understands how policies can impact everybody, not just the end user, before they kind of put things into blanket effect. Because even if they were to put a policy out there, if it wasn't really well thought out, it's not going to be very well enforceable either. And we've kind of seen that in the EU as well.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk about this like from a investor perspective as well, in terms of like understanding these new technologies that are coming through and really supporting you guys in this. You guys have raised $50 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
What have those conversations been like? How eager have investors been to put their money in? And do they have any hesitancy about like what the future of AI looks like?
Totally. Both of our rounds, our Series A and Series B, have been preempted. So we actually weren't actively fundraising. Investors have approached us and offered very favorable terms for the company. But investors are very excited about and are very intelligent and smart to the trends, right? Like they know what's coming. Their goal is to imagine the future and fund the ideas they think are going to be very successful products that will improve the lives of everybody in the world, hopefully. And not just improve lives, but also solve real problems, which will obviously improve lives. And so, our investors are very smart individuals, and they're very supportive. I think that they really believe in the strength of the team and the vision and the problem area. And so they've been great.
What is the money that you guys have raised going toward? I know building an AI company is just expensive, like data and research and development.
You're exactly right. Yeah. So I think most AI companies, especially AI companies that train their own foundation models, will let you know that most of their money does go towards research, whether it's data and or compute and or training the models. Definitely that's definitely it. There's nothing special there. It does go towards things like that.
Yeah, definitely. What are your visions for the future of Hume, of the AI industry in general? What are you guys preparing for right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Our vision is to be the de facto voice AI for all applications that developers are building, applications you have on your phone as a consumer. It'll be a voice that, and we already have a model out, Empathic Voice Interface 2, that does do that. EV3 will be launching very shortly in the upcoming weeks. But, you know, we want people to be able to open up their phones and have something that they love talking to that can help them very easily, that understands their preferences, is catered and tailored towards their well-being and their long-term goals, and can, be a friend.
So in this fundraising journey, the AI industry is obviously so saturated. Every AI company is coming to investors right now asking to be invested in. What do you think set Hume apart to really start generating this funding?
Yeah, absolutely. The first is, I think, building the right team to position yourself for a really big opportunity. Funding is a part of an opportunity formula, right? Like funding equates to a portion of the company, which equates to the value of the company, which equates to the value of the space and the market. And so I think that it's important to have the team ready to, or not the team ready, but the team and the product and the history and the work to equate to ultimately the market opportunity and the problem space. And so I think building that team is very important, and making sure that you have the right people in place. And then also working on something that's really great as a product that has a really, strong capability to meet that demand and meet that problem. So, and then related to that, working on the right problem, working on a problem that's big enough, right? Like, it doesn't matter if, you have a compelling product to solve a very specific use case if there isn't just going to be VC interest in that, and or if the problem is too small. And so
How did you guys go about building that team? What were some characteristics you looked for in people or roles that you had to make sure were filled in order to get that funding?
Totally. While I can't take credit for the technical hires at the company, which are fantastic, I have been a part of many interviews. The team is amazing. If people are interested in working at Hume and you're an AI engineer, please apply. Hiring is its own different ball game. I like to think we're pretty good at it at Hume, and I think that's one of our strengths as a company, is that we are really close as a company. Everyone really enjoys hanging out with each other. We spend 10, 12 hours every day in the office together in New York City, and it's I think when you're hiring, you want to make sure that they're a really great communicator, they have the right skills to obviously fit the criteria, more importantly, and then that you want to work with them. Hiring is super interesting. And I think that the more that you hire, the better that you get at it. It really is people reading, and
Yeah. And my last question for you is, being part of the under 30 list, being a young leader in this space, what do you think youth has to do with the growth of AI right now? How do you see your position as someone young but building in this innovative industry?
Oh my gosh. I do think that the younger generation is so critical to this. I've highlighted one of the concerns, which is that because the technology is so new, and when we talk about youth, we're even talking about maybe folks in middle school or high school, they are a lot more tech savvy and a lot more quick to adopt new trends and new ideas than older generations. And oftentimes these tools just don't have the safety guardrails built in yet. And so that's very dangerous. But at the same time, their adoption, their willingness to test, and their ability to, utilize these technologies in their lives is really what's accelerating the market. I think that since I graduated college, ChatGPT and OpenAI came into play, and I can't even begin to imagine what school is like now. I've heard it's quite crazy. Like, I think they don't have tests anymore or something, like something crazy, like something actually like insane. Like, I think my younger cousin was telling me, we just don't have homework anymore. I'm like, what? Like, that's crazy. And it's like, well, yeah, because homework can all be answered by AI.
Right.
And so I think that, we'll definitely see more and more assistive help with AI, things that'll make everyone's lives easier. And I think it'll be really important to build the guardrails for younger folks. And also, if painted very positively, which I believe, I'm like an AI optimist, I do think that what children and what younger people will need to learn is probably going to be quite different. Like they might just need to adapt to working with an AI and be like, okay, well, maybe I don't need to know how to spell things correctly anymore. But what are the things that I can build with AI, right? Like maybe it'll allow me to build my own website with AI because it's super easy. Maybe it can accelerate me starting a business because it lets me find the information. And so like the things that you will have to do in the world still don't change. Still need to get a job, still need to start businesses, like not you, but like people in general, like the economy still has to run. But I think that it'll just be more assistive to those individuals and to the younger generation. And I think for schools, they need to figure out how to adapt their curriculum and let people work with AI to achieve even maybe higher expectations and higher performances. But that's not easy because it's all happened so fast over the past 2 to 3 years. But it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. We have a long road ahead with AI, but so many cool things happening.
We do.
Well, thank you so much, Janet, for joining me today. This was awesome to hear your thoughts on everything and how you guys are building today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It was so great chatting with you.